Yo, what's good? Big Z here, and today I'm going to show you guys how to make this track. So the song is called Heaven to Me by Diablo. It's a sick track. It's got all his classic style and wobbles in it. So let's jump right into how it's made. All the Serum presets and MIDI files will be linked down below. So the main synth wobbles in the drop consists of 3 different synths. Here's what they sound like together. So there's 2 chord layers, and then there's a lead layer on top of those to emphasize the lead melody. So let's start with one of the chord layers that sounds like this. So this synth is 2 saw waves. One just has 1 voice of unison and is an octave below the other. The other has 7 voices of unison and is more detuned. So I've got this envelope here that's controlling the cutoff of the filter, and it's also controlling the detune of the oscillator B. The envelope is a pretty basic shape with just a little bit of attack at 41 milliseconds, and you can mess around with this node here to get the attack sounding just right. In the effects section, there's a couple things going on. Here's what the sound sounds like without the effects. And here's with the effects. So first of all, we have this envelope modulating the mix of this hyper section here. Then we have some dimension expander on there with the size at about 11% and the mix a little above halfway. So then a lot of the sound is coming from the distortion. It sounds really distorted, and that's because there's a bunch of tube distortion on it. I have the mix turned up to about 60-something% and the drive turned up almost all the way to 80%. After that, just a little bit of chorus. As for other processing, I have some EQ, cutting off some annoying frequencies around 3000 Hertz. Then I have some OTT on top of that. The second synth wobble is playing the same chords, and it sounds like this. And this one, instead of saw waves, is just 1 square wave with 7 voices of unison and barely any detune. And we have this envelope that's the exact same shape as the envelope in the other wobble, and it's modulating the cutoff of the filter. In the effects section, we have the same tube distortion, except even more this time. Then I have some chorus on there again. Then as for processing with this one, I have some pretty harsh bit crusher on there to distort it even more. Then I have some EQ, and then I have some OTT. Then I have even more EQ because there are some annoying frequencies coming from the bit crusher that I wanted to reduce a little bit. So on both of these chords, you'll notice that there's some pitch bending going on. So throughout the whole thing, you'll notice at some parts, to give it some more movement and that classic Diablo style, you're going to want to pitch bend some things. So notice where these pitch bends are and how it affects the sound. Diablo always has some type of pitch bending going on in his melodies and chords, and it just gives everything more movement and life. Now onto the lead layer that's sitting on top of those chords. And this sound is a saw wave in oscillator A and a square wave in oscillator B. They both have 1 voice of unison, except in oscillator B, I'm using the sync mode and turning it up a little bit to give it more of a distorted sync feel. As with the last 2 wobbles, I have this envelope affecting the cutoff of the filter, and it's the same exact envelope shape as the last 2 wobbles. In the effects section, I'm doing the same thing where I'm affecting the mix of the hyper section with the envelope. I also have some dimension expander on there. I have a ton of tube distortion on there, and again, a little bit of chorus. Here's the EQ on this sound, and then I have some OTT on there like always. A big part of these synths as well is that they're all going to the same bus and being compressed and saturated together. So without the compression and saturation on the bus, they all sound like this. And together they sound like this. And that's just with some more OTT and then some tape saturation. Let's move on to the bass sound. So this sound is just a simple saw wave, one voice of unison, nothing fancy going on. I've got this envelope that looks slightly different from the synth's envelope, and that's because I'm putting the sustain up more, so the notes seem like they're longer. For processing, I have the CLA bass plugin with compression, distortion, and chorus. Then here's the EQ I have on that. And then I have a little bit of multi-band compression that's taking out some of the lows and compressing them more heavily. One thing you'll notice is in between the spaces where the synths are playing, there's a little bit of a wobble fill going on. It's this sound right here. And how I made that was just an LFO set to a 16th note rate that's affecting the cutoff, and I have a saw wave and a square wave. The effects, just dimension expander and some chorus. It's just a nice way to fill the gaps in between the synths with another different synth layer instead of just using a drum fill every time. Alright, that's it for this one. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to follow me on Instagram and Spotify below. Other than that, I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.